I was kicked out of my house on Christmas Eve by my own mother, and not even in a screaming match or emotional blow-up. No. She handed me a garbage bag of my clothes. Fake smiled in front of the neighbors and said, "It's time you find your own way. You're almost 30. That was the year my sister Lauren got engaged to the walking jawline known as Chad. It was also the year my parents decided they had one daughter. Spoiler, I am the other one. I grew up being the extra, not the spare the emotional butler. When Mom cried over Dad's affair in 2003, I held her hair as she puked. When Lauren failed calculus, I wrote her makeup essay. When Dad forgot Lauren's DUI, I was the one who drove 80 miles to bail her out in silence. I was the support beam they never credited. You're so reliable, they said. Lauren needs more help. She's fragile. No. Lauren was reckless, manipulative, and knew exactly how to get what she wanted with a head tilt and a fake cry. When she announced her engagement, the world stopped. Suddenly, I was a ghost living in a house of applause. Every conversation ended with, "Lauren this, Lauren that. Did you hear what Lauren said to the florist?" So witty. I was footing half the household bills by then. Mom hadn't worked in years. Dad's retirement fund was basically dust. My paychecks from my remote marketing job were the only reason the heating stayed on some months. But they called it chipping in. Then came the wedding. They wanted a beach ceremony, fancy hotel, open bar. Lauren wanted doves, actual live doves. And guess who was asked to be the unpaid wedding planner? Yeah, me. I arranged catering, helped write the vows, and even picked up dry cleaning, all while they praised Lauren for how organized everything was. It was at the wedding that everything snapped. I stood at the edge of the reception hall in a dress Lauren chose a dull gray sheath that looked like a sad curtain. She said it made me less distracting for the photos. I held a tray of water glasses because someone needed to refill them, and no one else would. Not even the bartender, who had vanished. And then it happened. Dad took the mic. He raised his champagne and said, "To our only daughter, the most beautiful bride, the smartest woman we know. Lauren, we are so proud to have raised such a remarkable young lady." They clinked glasses. I stood there, tray still in hand, forgotten. After the speeches, Mom pulled me aside, smiling like a debutante on cocaine. "Can you help tidy up before people start leaving? Just so we don't look trashy." I didn't say a word. I just placed the tray down on the table, walked out of the reception hall, into the cold night air, and left. No scene, no tears, no goodbye. I went home, packed a duffel, and drove 3 states away to a friend's apartment where the rent was cheap and no one called me reliable. I didn't answer texts. I ignored Lauren's "Where are you" messages. And when Christmas came, I got a card from my parents with no return address. Inside was a single sentence, "We hope you learn gratitude this year." 6 months later, they received a certified letter. It stated that all financial support had ceased. The mortgage I'd been paying stopped. The credit card they let me use to build my score canceled. My name had been quietly removed from every shared account. I had taken everything I ever gave them and redirected it to myself. I moved into a beach house I bought under a trust. I started a scholarship fund for women in toxic families pursuing independence through education. None of the applicants could be immediate relatives. My cousin Emily called last week. She said Mom had posted a cryptic Facebook status about being betrayed by blood and how money changes people. I smiled, sipped my coffee, and said, "Good. Let them talk." They said my sister was their only child. So I became someone else entirely. Someone free. Someone finally done. They said I was heartless, but for once, I put my heart first. After I walked out of that wedding, it was like someone turned down the volume on my life. No more constant buzzing texts. No calls begging me to pick up milk or to talk to Lauren. She's having another moment. It was quiet, unnervingly so. At first, it felt like breathing for the first time after years underwater. I could wake up and drink coffee without planning someone else's chaos. I could sit in silence and not feel like I was wasting time. But then the messages started. It began with Lauren. Of course. "Hey, where did you go after the reception? Everyone was asking." I ignored it. 2 days later, Mom said, "You're mad. Please don't make this about you. It was my wedding." I blocked her. Then Mom, texts, calls, voicemails. You're being dramatic. This is not the daughter I raised. You owe us an explanation. No, I didn't. I stopped paying the credit card that was in my name but used for family emergencies. I shut down the grocery auto order I'd been paying for each month. Quiet moves, clean breaks. That's when things got nasty. Lauren went online. Her favorite place to vent without looking like she was venting. A Facebook post. It's sad when family turns their back on you over petty jealousy. I guess not everyone can handle someone else's happiness. A week later, Mom commented on it. We only ever asked for a little help. Some people can't handle not being the center of attention. People ate it up. Aunt Marlene sent me a concerned message about how I should make peace before it's too late. I told her peace was exactly what I was making. The guilt campaign didn't stop. They sent me photos of Mom's health issues. Her sitting with a blood pressure monitor and sad eyes. They said Dad was stressed beyond belief, as if he hadn't already been hiding his second family's phone bill in our utilities 10 years ago. I said nothing. I answered no one. That drove them nuts. Lauren tried a different angle. A voice message. I know you're hurt, but punishing everyone like this is cruel. Just come over. Let's talk. Please. I'll even let you pick the wine. Let me. She'd let me pick the wine. That voicemail sat in my inbox for 3 days before I deleted it. Not because it hurt, but because it didn't. That was the scariest part. I didn't feel anything anymore. Not guilt, not anger, not fear. Just done. I started therapy around that time. Virtual, once a week, because even my new city felt like borrowed space. I told my therapist everything, the emotional bookkeeping, the way they treated my silence like a crime. She looked at me one day and said, "You were never part of their story. You were their support character. They just didn't think you'd ever leave the script." That hit me like a freight train. I had been the ghost holding up the stage lights so Lauren could have her spotlight. The lighting tech with no name in the playbill. The worst part? I thought if I held those lights long enough, someone might notice me. Now I realized I had been playing the wrong role in the wrong play, with the wrong cast. So I started building walls. Not brick and mortar ones, emotional ones. I didn't argue, I didn't explain, I didn't justify. I just backed away, and they noticed. Lauren messaged again. This time, it was a screenshot of a bank statement with my name on a card being used to buy spa packages and takeout. I hadn't used that card in months. Oops! Didn't realize it was still active, "We'll pay you back." She didn't. Instead, 2 days later, Mom texted me a photo of a notice, a late payment on my card, asking why I was abandoning them. That's when it really hit me. They didn't want me back. They wanted the resources, the labor, the money, the emotional duct tape. They didn't miss me. They missed the machine I had become, dependable, mute, and always available. So I shut everything down, changed passwords, pulled bank records, tracked every single transaction for the last year. And what I found? Oh, that would be the beginning of the end. It started with a receipt, an Uber charge from a city I'd never been to, billed to my account. A place Lauren had posted about the same day on Instagram, captioned, "Girls' weekend." I opened the card's portal and started digging. Over $6,000 in the last 4 months alone. Spas, brunches, a hotel room in Charleston, a boutique with a $500 charge labeled retail therapy, my name, my card, my credit, and none of it mine. I printed it all, every charge, every dollar. I highlighted anything that smelled like Lauren. Then I cross-referenced those dates with her Instagram posts, which she never locked down because she's addicted to being admired. Dates matched. Outfits matched. Even timestamps. But here's the part that twisted the knife. I pulled my old bank records and found transfers, not just from me to Mom and Dad, but from them to Lauren. Every time I lent my parents rent money, they forwarded a portion to her under memos like gift or emergency. She wasn't struggling. She was being funded. By me. I was livid, but not the kind of anger that makes you scream. No, this was surgical, clean, the kind of fury that sharpens rather than explodes. So I called my cousin Emily. She always hated Lauren's theatrics, but kept the peace for Grandma's sake. When I told her what I found, she just said, "Finally, let's burn this shit down." She wasn't kidding. Emily works in legal compliance for a regional bank. Not a lawyer, but close enough to know how to start fires the smart way. She walked me through every step, freezing the credit card, issuing fraud claims, filing a police report for identity theft because, yes, Lauren had used my name for a hotel booking amateur move. I wasn't interested in jail. I was interested in exposure. We crafted a letter, cold, professional, with all the documentation, timestamps, and screenshots. I addressed it to my parents and CC'd Lauren, plus a few strategic BCs, including the family attorney they used to brag about having on retainer. Then I waited. 3 days passed. Then an email. From Mom. I think there's been a misunderstanding. Lauren only borrowed the card because you always said she could use it in emergencies. Are you really going to throw family away over a few charges? A few charges? I replied once, attached the spreadsheet, and wrote, "This wasn't an emergency. This was theft. Do not contact me again unless it's through counsel." Then silence. Until the phone rang. Dad. I almost didn't answer, but morbid curiosity got me. He didn't yell. He didn't apologize. He just said, "Your mother is very upset. Do you really think it's appropriate to air private matters like this with other family members?" I laughed. For the first time in months, it felt real. Dad, Lauren stole from me. You covered it up. And you want to talk about appropriate? He sputtered some nonsense about loyalty and misunderstandings. I hung up. Emily called the next day. "You're going to want to see this." A post from Lauren on Facebook. Captioned, "Sometimes the people closest to you turn out to be the most toxic. Glad I'm cutting out all negative energy before the honeymoon. Hashtag self-care." I almost felt bad. Until I remembered that she once threw a tantrum at Thanksgiving because I got more compliments on my pie than she did on her dry-ass turkey. Nope, not today. I filed a cease and desist letter with Emily's help. Sent it to Lauren. Included screenshots of her charges, her messages, and her public posts bragging about spa weekends. She went quiet. For about 2 weeks. Then Mom tried again. This time, she emailed Emily directly, saying I was mentally unwell and acting out because I was jealous of Lauren's success. Claimed they had always treated me with love, but I was twisting things. Emily, bless her, replied, "Any further defamatory statements will be met with legal escalation. This client has retained documentation and is within her rights to pursue civil restitution. Please govern yourselves accordingly. It was so beautiful," I nearly cried. And while they scrambled, I was preparing the real blow. Because remember that scholarship fund I mentioned? I was already pouring money into it, naming it something neutral. But the day that cease and desist landed, I officially incorporated it, the First Daughters Foundation. Mission to support women estranged from family due to emotional abuse, financial manipulation, or scapegoating. I made it a point to include a policy in the bylaws that no immediate family members of the founder could ever be eligible. I released a public post announcing the fund, tagged some women's empowerment orgs, shared it with friends. Emily shared it. My old college roommate shared it. Lauren's high school friends shared it. By the end of the week, Mom posted a blurry meme on Facebook. "Don't bite the hand that raised you, even if it slapped you sometimes. Classy." But none of that mattered. Because I had finally done the one thing they never expected. I chose myself. Fully. Loudly. Publicly. And it was about to get even louder. The first sign of collapse came from Lauren's husband. Well, her almost ex. Chad messaged me out of nowhere. Polite. Too polite. One of those, "Hey, can I ask something awkward?" texts that reek of panic sweat. I waited a day, then replied, "Only if you don't expect a polite answer." He asked if I had any insight into Lauren's spending patterns. Claimed he'd just now discovered that she'd maxed out 2 of their joint cards and opened a secret line of credit, all while playing the demure bride, sipping green juice on Instagram. I told him to check for a Nordstrom charge on April 8th and a boutique hotel on April 9th. Both on my card, mind you. His response? "She told me you gave her that card because you were going through a generous phase." A generous phase. I told him good luck. That was the last I heard from Chad, but not from the drama. Because 3 days later, right on schedule, Lauren went nuclear. She called me. Yes. After months of silence, of gaslighting, of backdoor theft and public posts about toxic siblings, she had the audacity to call. I didn't answer, but I did listen to the voicemail. It was 4 minutes of tears, sniffles, and the kind of breathy sobs that had once convinced Dad to buy her a car after she failed her driver's test. "That's not an exaggeration. I know we've had issues," she said, "but you can't just destroy everything. You've humiliated me." Chad's left. Mom's not eating. Dad is furious. "You've broken this family." I played it again, just to hear the part where she said, "You were supposed to help us, not hurt us." That was when I realized they never saw me as family. Just a tool, a buffer, the fixer. And the fixer broke the machine. A week later, my old neighbor sent me a text. Did you see your mom's post? Is that real?" I checked Facebook. There it was, a rambling wall of text, half Jesus quotes, half open letter, all delusion. She said her ungrateful daughter had attacked the family with false claims, slandered her innocent sister, and used money as a weapon. Attached? A photo of me at age 6, holding a birthday cake, with the caption, "We loved her so much. She changed." I didn't respond, but someone else did. Emily. She commented, "Actually, what changed is she stopped being your personal ATM. Receipts available upon request." Nuclear. Mom deleted the post within hours, but the cousins saw it. The old church friends saw it. My high school art teacher messaged me to say, "Good for you. I always knew you were the strong one." And then, karma's curtain call. I got an email from the bank I used to share with my parents. Just a bland little notice. "Your co-account holders have attempted to access closed files. Their access has been denied. You remain the sole authorized party." That told me they finally realized I'd locked them out of everything. Every fallback plan, every safety net. Their goose was cooked, and I'd taken the oven with me. In the weeks that followed, the messages turned desperate. "You'll regret this. You're breaking Mom's heart. You need to think about your legacy." Legacy. That one made me laugh out loud. Because I was thinking about legacy, just not theirs. The First Daughters Foundation had received its first round of applicants. I read every story personally. Women writing about mothers who stole their credit, sisters who got trust funds while they got eviction notices, fathers who said, "You're too sensitive." One applicant was from my own hometown. She didn't know who I was. She just found the listing and applied. I approved her and donated double, and all the while, I heard nothing but silence from the people who once called me essential. The people who said I was selfish for wanting space. The ones who clinked glasses and toasted our only daughter. And you know what? I was fine. No, better than fine. I was unbothered, unchained, unavailable. For the first time in my life, I wasn't holding anything up for anyone else. The house I bought had a porch that overlooked the ocean. It didn't come with peace. I brought that with me. Sometimes I sit out there with my laptop and scroll through my old family photos. Not to remember, just to confirm that I don't miss any of it. Not the noise, not the obligations, not the way I used to beg for scraps of approval like a dog in my own home. They used to say, "You're being dramatic." Now, they say nothing at all, and it's glorious. It's been over a year now. No holiday cards, no voicemails, no surprise visits. They've gone radio silent, either too proud to reach out or too scared of what I might say if they do. Either way, I'm not holding my breath. And honestly, I sleep better in this silence than I ever did in their noise. I've built a life they don't recognize. They wouldn't know where to find me even if they tried, because the version of me they knew doesn't exist anymore. I wake up to ocean air and birds instead of Lauren's passive-aggressive texts. I walk barefoot to my favorite coffee shop where the barista knows my name and not my resume of family favors. My phone is filled with scholarship applicants, work messages from women I admire, and memes from Emily. No guilt trips, no martyr monologues, no gaslighting disguised as concern. And for the first time in my life, I don't owe anyone an explanation. Emily and I still joke about the Facebook saga sometimes. She screenshots anything Lauren posts that smells like vague subtext. "Toxic people always play the victim," one said. Emily added a caption. "That's rich coming from the one who faked tears to steal a hotel room." I didn't respond. I don't need to anymore. I've redefined family for myself. It's the friends who sent me Amazon gift cards when I first moved. It's the neighbor who waters my plants when I travel. It's the women I fund through the foundation who write back months later to say, "Your help changed everything." That's family. It's not people who call you selfish when you finally ask for something in return. It's not people who toast your erasure with champagne. It's not people who only call you when they need a ride, a loan, a lie, or a sacrifice. They can keep their legacy of guilt and golden children. I'm building something else. Last week, I got an email from a young woman in Arizona. She wrote that her sister had stolen her tuition money, her parents blamed her for causing drama, and she was sleeping on a friend's couch, afraid to ask for help again. She ended her message with, "I don't even know if I deserve this support, but I saw your story, and it gave me hope." I cried, not because it hurt, but because I recognized that version of myself, the one who used to ask, "Is it really that bad?" while carrying an entire family on her back. And I cried because I knew the answer now. Yes, it really was that bad, but it's better now. So much better. I donated her tuition in full. No red tape, no shame, no strings. Just freedom. The kind I wish someone had handed me years ago. Sometimes I wonder if they'll ever show up again. Maybe when one of them gets sick, or when Lauren gets dumped again and needs to crash just for a bit. Maybe they'll come with apologies too late, or tears rehearsed in the mirror. Maybe. But if they do, they won't find me angry. They'll find me indifferent. The opposite of love isn't hate. It's done. They said I was heartless, but for once, I put my heart first. And I have never felt more whole. Story 2. My sister broke my $2,500 wheelchair as a joke, so I took her to court. I'm a 25-year-old guy, and I've been paraplegic since I was 18. An accident changed my life, and now I rely on a custom wheelchair that cost me $2,500. It's not just a chair, it's my independence, my way of getting around, my freedom. My family's always been close, or at least that's how it used to feel. But then there's my sister, Sarah, 27, always the jokester, always looking for a laugh. She's the kind of person who thinks every moment is a setup for her next big prank, no matter how anyone else feels about it. A few weeks ago, we had a family reunion at my place, which I was hosting, which meant dealing with the chaos of my relatives piling into my house. I like seeing everyone, but it's always a lot. And then Sarah shows up late, already smelling like she'd had a few too many drinks. She barged in with a goofy grin, loudly making her usual round of jokes. Some of them were all right. Others just felt like she was trying too hard. But that's Sarah, no one calls her out. And she never seems to notice when her jokes cross a line. It started with little comments. Sarah threw out a few quips about how she wished she had a cool ride like mine, gesturing at my wheelchair. Everyone else just laughed awkwardly, shifting in their seats, but I could feel the air in the room change. I tried to shrug it off. This wasn't the first time she'd said stuff like that. But then she decided she needed to get more hands-on with her jokes. Sarah strutted over to me, grabbed the handles of my wheelchair, and started pushing me around the room like we were kids playing with a go-kart. She even made engine noises like this was some kind of game. At first, I thought she'd stop if I asked. So I told her, "Hey, cut it out, man." She just laughed louder, saying she was lightening the mood. Nobody else said a word. They just kept glancing around, some trying to pretend like they didn't notice. I looked at my parents, but they just gave me that look that said, "Just let it go." Oh, but I couldn't. So I told Sarah again, firmly, this time I wasn't playing around. My chair isn't a toy. Sarah smirked like I challenged her and said, "Relax, I'm just messing with you." And then she got it in her head to try something even more ridiculous. She tried to do a wheelie with my chair. "Yeah, you read that right." She yanked back on the handles, trying to lift the front wheels off the ground. I shouted at her to stop, but she just kept going. Then it all went south. She couldn't keep her balance, and the wheelchair tipped. One of the wheels landed hard on the floor with a loud crack. I barely managed to catch myself as I tumbled out of the chair, but my focus immediately snapped to the wheelchair. The right wall was bent out of shape. The frame was twisted. It was trashed. The room went dead silent, and for a moment I thought maybe, just maybe, Sarah would realize how badly she'd screwed up. Instead, she just shrugged and said, "It's not a big deal. I was just joking around." She didn't even apologize. My face was burning with anger, but all she could see was her own embarrassment. I demanded that she pay for the damage, but she just threw her hands up and said she didn't have that kind of money. Some family members jumped in trying to play peacemaker. My aunt said Sarah didn't mean it. She just got carried away. My uncle thought I was blowing things out of proportion, saying, "You know how Sarah is." But this wasn't about how serious this was. My mobility, my independence. And now I was stuck using a manual backup wheelchair. That's a literal pain to get around in. It's clunky and way harder for me to move around in, but I had no choice. I kept pushing Sarah to pay for the repairs, but she just kept saying she couldn't afford it. It became obvious she thought I'd just drop it and move on. But after that night, I couldn't just let it go. A few friends who'd heard the story couldn't believe how Sarah acted, and they were the ones who helped me see my options. They pointed out that if Sarah wouldn't take responsibility, I could take her to small claims court. At first, it sounded extreme, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized this wasn't just about the money. It was about holding her accountable for once. So that's what I did. I filed the paperwork to take Sarah to small claims court for the $2,500 to cover the cost of a replacement wheelchair. Word spread fast through the family, and the reactions were all over the place. Some said I was taking it too far, that I was going to ruin the family over a stupid mistake. Others, mostly the ones who'd been on the receiving end of Sarah's pranks before, thought she finally needed a wake-up call. But for the first time, I didn't care what they thought. I knew I couldn't back down this time. I could tell Sarah wasn't taking it seriously, though. She sent me this smug text. I knew taking Sarah to court wouldn't be easy, but I was determined. This wasn't just about the wheelchair. It was the last straw. For years, she made jokes at my expense, treating my situation like an excuse for her pranks. It was as if, in her mind, I was just a character in her comedy. But this time, I couldn't laugh it off. I couldn't pretend everything was okay. The court date came quickly, and the tension in the air was heavy. Sarah walked into the courtroom with that same irritating expression as if the whole thing was still some kind of joke. She didn't even look worried. She was dressed casually, as if she were heading to a family lunch, and I could tell she still didn't believe I had the guts to go through with it. When the judge entered, the murmuring stopped. I was nervous, but I kept my composure as the hearing began. My lawyer laid out the facts. We showed photos of the broken wheelchair and the repair estimates, and explained how my independence had been impacted. I used my backup manual wheelchair to demonstrate how much harder it was to get around, and how even the simplest tasks have become a nightmare. Throughout the hearing, Sarah stayed relaxed when it was her turn to speak. She gave the same excuse she always used. It was just a joke. I didn't mean any harm. The judge looked at her sternly, and for the first time I saw a flicker of worry on her face. I think she finally realized this wasn't going to end the way she thought. My family was seated behind me in the courtroom, and I could feel their discomfort. My mom wrung her hands nervously, and my dad stared at the floor, avoiding eye contact with me. They weren't on my side. They never really had been. They thought I was overreacting, that it was just a wheelchair and nothing was justified. Tearing the family apart as if Sarah's pranks hadn't already done that long ago, the judge's decision was swift and clear. Sarah was responsible for the damage and had to pay the $2,500 for a new wheelchair. A wave of relief washed over me. For the first time, someone other than me was saying that what she did wasn't okay. Sarah went pale and tried to argue that she didn't have the money, but the judge was firm. If she didn't pay, there would be legal consequences. As soon as the hearing ended, Sarah stormed out, furious, saying I had ruined the family over a chair. None of my family members came to speak with me. They all ran after her, as they always did, trying to comfort her as if I were the villain in this story. That night, I went home alone. It felt strange to realize that my family, the people I grew up with and thought would always support me, had never really seen me as a whole person to them. I was just a burden who should be grateful for whatever scraps of attention they threw my way. But for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. I wasn't carrying their expectations anymore. A few weeks later, my mom sent me a message asking to talk. I knew what was coming, but I decided to give her a chance. We met at a nearby cafe, and she launched into the speech I had expected. "You know your sister didn't mean any harm." I laughed bitterly. She kept going, talking about how Sarah was going through a tough time and how I needed to understand that family is family. I looked her in the eye and calmly asked, "And when will someone understand what I'm going through? When will anyone care about my pain?" She fell silent, guilt flickering across her face for the first time. But it was too late for me. In the months that followed, the distance between me and my family grew wider. They blamed me for the rift, acting like I was the problem. Sarah refused to pay right away, and it took a long legal process, including threats of asset seizure, to finally get the money from her. But the money wasn't what mattered most. What truly mattered was that at last I had stood up for myself. One day, I got a message from my dad inviting me to Sarah's daughter's birthday party. He said Sarah wanted to apologize and that we should move on. I declined, not because I held a grudge, but because I finally understood that I didn't need their approval anymore. I was fine on my own. The new wheelchair arrived, bringing with it a renewed sense of freedom. I moved on with my life, made new friends, and gradually distanced myself from my family. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. They never understood that this wasn't about money or jokes. It was about respect, something I had learned to demand, even if it meant rolling through life on my own. And Sarah, well, she never tried to contact me again. I heard through the grapevine that her life wasn't going well. Her reckless behavior and constant pranks drove people away. She lost her job, and her boyfriend left her not long after. Maybe, just maybe, she finally learned the difference between a joke and a humiliation. As for me, I kept moving forward, and for the first time, I didn't feel the need to apologize for being who I am or for demanding respect. If there's one thing this experience taught me, it's that family isn't always the people you share blood with. Sometimes family is the people who choose to stand by you and respect who you are. And I finally found that months had passed since the court hearing. And although I initially felt relieved, the aftermath was harder than I expected. I knew things wouldn't be the same with my family, but the isolation that followed hit me deeper than I imagined. Still, I came to realize that some decisions, no matter how painful, are necessary for peace of mind. This fight wasn't just about the wheelchair, it was about respect and autonomy, things I never thought I'd have to demand from my own family. During this time, my mom tried to reconcile with me several times, always saying the same thing. You know, Sarah didn't mean any harm. But the problem wasn't just how serious it was, about how everyone always excused her behavior. No matter what damage she caused, even when it was something as vital as my wheelchair, the lack of empathy hurt the most. And I knew that for my own well-being, I had to distance myself not out of anger, but out of necessity. Months after the court's decision, Sarah finally paid for the wheelchair, though without any apology. The payment came as a bank transfer, no message, no words. That was her way of saying, in her mind, that it was over. But for me, the real closure didn't come with the money. It came when I accepted that I couldn't change other people, only how I reacted to them with the money. I purchased a new wheelchair identical to the one she had broken. Receiving it felt like regaining a part of myself that had been taken away. It wasn't just a means of getting around. It was my freedom. I could go out without hesitation, move without struggling, and live without the burden of the old manual wheelchair that had made life unnecessarily difficult. The sense of freedom returned, and with it, a renewed sense of purpose. I started seeking support outside my family circle. I joined disability advocacy groups and made friends who truly understood what I was going through in ways my family never could. These new connections showed me that I didn't have to fight every battle alone, that there were people who would stand by me and support me. Slowly, my life took on new meaning. I enrolled in assistive technology courses and began giving talks on independence and the importance of demanding respect. I found that many people like me were struggling to be seen and heard in a world that often dismisses our experiences. Becoming a voice in that space was empowering and healing for me. Meanwhile, the attempts from my family to reconnect dwindled. They realized I wasn't going to fall back into the same toxic dynamic. My dad made one last attempt, inviting me to a family gathering, saying that Sarah wanted to apologize and that we should move on. But I knew that conversation wouldn't bring the change I needed. I had already forgiven Sarah in my heart, but I didn't need her validation to move forward. That part of my life was already behind me. I politely declined the invitation, telling my dad that I wished them well, but I was no longer interested in patching up something that was already finished for me. He was silent for a moment, and for the first time, I felt he understood. After that, They stopped trying to convince me. Sarah, on the other hand, took a rougher path. Over time, her reckless behavior and lack of responsibility began catching up with her. I heard through the grapevine that she lost her job after making an inappropriate joke at work, and her boyfriend left her soon after. It was sad to see her spiral, but it was her journey to face, not mine. I could no longer carry the burden of her choices. As time passed, I found happiness and peace. The emotional scars were still there, but they no longer hurt the way they used to. Each day felt like a step toward a fuller, more confident version of myself. I learned to celebrate the small victories, going out for coffee on my own, working on new projects, and, most importantly, being at peace with my decisions. Looking back, I see that the court hearing was just the beginning of something bigger, building my emotional independence. Life isn't simple, and the people we love don't always treat us the way we deserve. But the most important thing is learning to value yourself, even if it means letting go of certain relationships along the way. As for my family, I hope they're doing well. I hold no resentment toward them anymore. I've learned that forgiveness isn't about accepting or forgetting what happened. It's about freeing myself from the weight of that pain. And that's exactly what I did. Closing that chapter was an act of self-love, Sarah. I hope she finds her way and perhaps learns something from all this, but I no longer need her approval or anyone else's. I am enough, just as I am, and that, more than anything, is the real closure I've been looking for. Story 3. My sister falsely accused me, leading to my imprisonment for years. And now that I've been released, I will repay everything I went through in the same coin. My sister has always been a troublesome person, and we all knew it. She didn't even finish high school because when she was attending, she simply decided to disappear for years with a boyfriend. And when they broke up, she came back and immediately started living with us again. My mother and father complained to her but did no more than that. Obviously, this bothered me, and I told them several times, as I had already seen her take my things to sell several times. But they just said I should be patient and that they couldn't just kick my sister out of the house. However, one day she eventually did something that I couldn't even imagine she would do. The police knocked on our door, saying that a person from my neighborhood a few days ago saw someone leaving her house carrying her personal belongings. She followed this person and saw that they entered my house. She was masked, so they didn't know who she was. But still, they came to check the house with a warrant. We all already knew who had done this, and we just accepted them to enter, since we didn't have much of a choice. And they searched the house. They went to my sister's room and incredibly found nothing. But to my surprise, when they removed one of the layers of my bed, they found several objects that matched the description of the objects in the report. So they took me to jail. When I looked at my sister, I already knew it was she who was hiding everything there while I didn't see. And despite that, she didn't seem repentant, and she even seemed to be smiling. I thought that anyway. I would be released since that didn't prove anything. But to my surprise, some people who were robbed testified that it was indeed me who took the things. Maybe they did this out of anger and wanting someone to be arrested. Maybe they did this because I have the same height as my sister and could have been confused. I don't know. But in the end, I was convicted. 12 years in jail, a tarnished record. I lost my job and my college, and my sister was free all this time. I ended up getting out this year about 2 years earlier, for good behavior. I never forgave my sister or my parents, as after a while they didn't even believe that I was innocent. Even knowing my sister's personality, when I returned home, she was still living there, and since I didn't have a job or savings, I knew I would have to stay there too. For a long time, I lived with that person. But I had also decided that I wouldn't let her get away with it. I knew my sister wouldn't hide what she did, because she thought that now that I had served my sentence, she couldn't be arrested for it anymore. So when my parents left, I went straight to talk to her. Even before I said anything, she started laughing and mocking how I ended up in jail for something she did and continues to do to this day. And I really couldn't believe how easy it was to get away with it. She even said that I should be careful because if I got distracted, she would hide her things in my bed again, and I would be arrested again. However, what she didn't count on was that all this time I was recording everything secretly. I knew she would give herself up. I knew she wasn't ashamed of what she did. On the same day, I talked to a lawyer about it, and he agreed to represent me, earning 20% of what I would win. I know this is more than usual, but I didn't have much choice. Not only will I sue her for falsely accusing me, but I will also reveal to the court that she admits to continuing to do these things. I will also logically sue the government for being unjustly imprisoned for so many years. I know I will make a lot of money in the end, but honestly, I just want justice because I know no amount of money in the world will recover it. The time I lost during all those years in prison for something I didn't do, the court notification will arrive tomorrow, and I am eager to see her face when I show that I recorded everything she said. After the notification arrived, the house descended into chaos for the first time. My sister lost that arrogant demeanor. She tried to act like it wasn't a big deal, but I saw the panic in her eyes. She attempted to snatch the paper from my hand, but I already had copies stored away. "You're joking, right?" she said with a nervous smile that fooled no one. "Do you really think you're going to get away with this?" I replied. "Everything you did is about to come to light. That smug attitude of yours will be your downfall." As expected, my parents jumped into the argument. My mother was furious. Not at her, not at me, but at the situation. As always, she tried to minimize everything, insisting that I was overreacting and that this would destroy the family. My father, on the other hand, stayed quiet. He knew something was wrong, but always opted for silence to avoid conflict. That only fueled my anger. Years of his complacency. And now he stood there mute while I bore the brunt of it all. My sister began denying everything, screaming that I was crazy and that it was all a setup. But I knew she was scared. That's when she resorted to what she always did best: manipulation. She looked at our parents, tears welling up in her eyes, and said, "Are you really going to let him do this to me? He's trying to tear our family apart." Predictably, my mother caved. "You can't do this, son. She's your sister. Please think about what you're doing," but I didn't budge. "I've been thinking about this for 12 years, I said coldly. "Now it's time for someone to pay." The following days were intense. My sister tried everything. First, she offered fake apologies. She cried, begged, and promised to change. When that didn't work, she switched tactics. She started provoking me, trying to make me lose my temper, hoping I'd do something rash that she could use against me. But I was prepared. Every word, every thread I recorded, I knew every detail might prove useful. When the day of the hearing finally arrived, she looked confident again. She walked in, well-dressed, wearing that arrogant smile I'd come to despise. But I was calm. I knew what I had. During the trial, my lawyer didn't waste any time. The recordings I made were damning. Her voice confessing to her crimes was unmistakable. She tried to dismiss it, claiming I had doctored the recordings, that it was all part of a conspiracy, but the judge didn't seem convinced. Then came the part that enraged me the most. My father was called to testify. He hesitated, but ultimately admitted he knew my sister was a troublemaker and had stolen things before. It was a heavy blow to her, but for me it was a mix of relief and fury. Why hadn't he said anything sooner? Why let me rot in prison while he knew the truth? My mother, on the other hand, was a disaster. She tried to defend my sister, saying she was young and reckless but would never do something so severe. When asked why she didn't believe me, she muttered something about how hard it was to choose between her children. It was pathetic. There I was, 12 years later, with my life in ruins, while they were still protecting her. The most satisfying moment was when the recording was played. The courtroom fell silent as everyone listened to my sister incriminate herself. Her expression completely changed for the first time. She genuinely looked terrified. When the judge asked if she had anything to say, she broke down. She started crying, claiming she didn't know why she had done it, that she was confused, that she never wanted me to go to prison. But I knew it was just another manipulation. So did the judge. In the end, she was convicted of perjury and fabricating evidence. She was ordered to pay damages, an amount she'll likely never be able to afford. For me, it was a small victory, but the lawsuit against the government was still ongoing, and I knew there would be a tougher battle. As I left the courtroom, I felt a sense of relief, but also a strange emptiness. None of this would bring back the years I had lost. I still didn't have a job, a home, or a clear future ahead of me. But at least my sister was finally facing the consequences of her actions. The days that followed were a mix of tension and anticipation. My sister was still living in my parents' house, and the atmosphere was unbearable. She avoided me, but I knew she was plotting something. And I was right. One night, I overheard a conversation between her and my mother. My sister was saying she would find a way to turn things around, that I hadn't won anything yet. There was. She hadn't learned a thing. What she didn't realize was that I was prepared for the next step. I knew there were still more truths to uncover, more lies to expose. But the trial was just the beginning. She had a history of crimes and deceit that extended far beyond what she had already admitted to, and I would make sure it all came to light, every last detail. For now, I'm here waiting for her next move. But one thing is certain, my fight isn't over. She thinks she can keep getting away with it, but I won't stop until she pays for everything. There's still so much left to reveal, and I'm more determined than ever to see justice done. After weeks of living in that tense environment, something finally shifted. The notification came that the government had accepted my case against them. My lawyer was confident we'd secure a solid win, given the recordings and the government's glaring failure to properly investigate the case. This reignited something in me, the determination to end this chapter once and for all, not just with the government, but with my sister too. While the lawsuit against the government progressed, I began preparing my next move. I knew my sister would never change, and living under the same roof had become unbearable. Every time she crossed my path, she couldn't resist provoking me. Sometimes she'd smirk maliciously, as if she still had cards to play. Other times, she'd mutter under her breath that things wouldn't end like this. That's when I realized she still had something to hide. I started paying closer attention to her, the way she spent hours on the phone, how she disappeared for long stretches and returned with suspicious bags. I discovered she had a small locked room in the house we all assumed was empty. But something didn't feel right. It was time to find out. Using an excuse with my parents, I got the key to the room while my sister was out. When I entered, what I found confirmed my suspicions. The room was filled with boxes of items that clearly didn't belong to her. Clothes, electronics, even jewelry. She was still stealing. But this time, instead of hiding things in my bed, she stored them there. I took photos of everything, documenting each item and its condition. That night, I confronted my sister when we were alone. She was shocked when I showed her the photos. "You'll never change, will you?" I asked, keeping my voice calm. She tried to deny it, but she knew she was cornered. When she realized there was no way out, she lashed out at me verbally, saying I had always been the problem, that I deserved everything that happened to me. What she didn't know was that I'd already sent the photos to my lawyer and was recording everything she said in that moment. A few days later, with my lawyer's support, we handed all the evidence over to the police. They acted quickly. One morning, when she least expected it, the police knocked on our door. My mother panicked. My father stayed silent, as always. But my sister, she screamed, cried, and begged. But this time, there was no escape. They searched the room and confirmed everything I had reported. She was taken away in handcuffs, right in front of everyone. And as much as I hated to admit it, it was satisfying to see her finally face the consequences. The house became eerily quiet after that. My parents were inconsolable, not for me, but for her. Still, I knew there was no other way. I needed justice. Meanwhile, the case against the government was also nearing its end. After months of hearings and statements, the judge finally delivered the verdict. The government was found guilty of negligence for convicting me without conducting a proper investigation. I was awarded a substantial settlement, money that would never bring back the years I lost, but finally gave me a chance to start over with the money. I decided to do something I had always wanted: leave that house. I found a small apartment in a quiet neighborhood and started planning the next chapter of my life, but I couldn't completely move on just yet. I knew my sister was still in custody awaiting trial for her most recent crimes, and that gave me an odd sense of peace. The day of her trial arrived. I attended as a witness. When I walked into the courtroom, I saw him sitting there, head bowed. I didn't feel pity, but a bitter sense of satisfaction. She was finally where she belonged. The judge was relentless. The evidence was overwhelming, and her lack of remorse sealed her fate. She was sentenced to several years in prison, with no possibility of parole for a long time. As she was led away, she didn't look at me, but I knew she felt my gaze on her. My parents tried to maintain contact with me after everything, but I knew I needed to cut ties. They had never believed me when I needed them most, never stood up when everything was falling apart, And now, after everything, there was no room for them in my life. I severed all connections and focused on rebuilding what I had lost. Today, months after everything, I feel like I can finally breathe. My life is far from perfect, but for the first time in years, I feel like I'm in control. My sister is in prison. My parents are no longer part of my routine, and the settlement money has given me the chance to start over. But there's still an emptiness. A part of me knows that those lost years can never be recovered. What I don't know is if this is truly the end. My sister is like a shadow that always returns. And even in prison, I feel like it's not the last I'll hear of her. But for now, I'm at peace. And if she ever tries something again, I'll be ready. Because now I know I'm stronger than she will ever be. Story 2. I was imprisoned for years after my sister unjustly implicated me. I'll pay back whatever I endured with the same currency now that I'm free. We all knew that my sister was a troublemaker from the beginning. She just chose to go missing for years with a lover when she was in high school, so she never even completed it. She returned right away after their breakup and moved back in with us. Despite their complaints, my parents did little more than vent to her. Since I had already witnessed her taking my belongings to sell several times, it goes without saying that this upset me, and I told them so on multiple occasions. However, they just told me to wait and that they couldn't simply evict my sister. But finally, she did something that I never would have thought she would do. When the police arrived at our door, they informed us that someone from my neighborhood had seen someone leaving her home a few days prior with her personal stuff. She observed that this somebody had entered my home after following them. They arrived to investigate the residence with a warrant, even though they didn't know who she was since she was wearing a mask. We just let them entry even though we all knew who had done this, because we had little other option. They also looked about the house. Amazingly, they searched my sister's room and discovered nothing. To my astonishment, however, they discovered other items that matched the report's description of the goods when they took off one of my bed's layers. I was sent to jail as a result. I knew right away when I glanced at my sister that she was concealing everything from me. She even appeared to be laughing in spite of this, and she showed no signs of repentance. Since that proved nothing, I assumed that I would be freed nevertheless. To my astonishment, however, a few robbers testified that I was the one who really took the items. Perhaps they were angry and wanted someone arrested, which is why they did this. Perhaps they did this because they could have been puzzled because my sister and I are the same height. I'm not sure. However, I was ultimately found guilty. 12 years behind bars and a damaged record. My sister was free all this time, and I lost my position at my college. Due to my exemplary behavior, I was expelled this year, almost 2 years prior. My parents and sister didn't even think I was innocent after a while. Therefore, I never forgive them. Even being aware of my sister's disposition, she was still living there when I got home. I also knew I would have to stay there because I had neither funds nor a job. Long-term cohabitation with that individual. However, I had also made the decision that I would not allow her to get away with it. I was aware that my sister would not conceal her actions since she believed that she could no longer be jailed for them. Now that I had completed my term, I so went right to speak with her once my folks departed. She began to laugh and make fun of me for getting locked up for something she did and still does, even before I said anything. Furthermore, I was astounded by how simple it was to get away with it. She also warned me to exercise caution because she would conceal her belongings in my bed once more and I would be jailed if I were sidetracked. She didn't realize, though, that I had been covertly recording everything the entire time. I had faith that she would surrender. I was aware that she didn't feel guilty about her actions. I discussed it with a lawyer that same day, and he agreed to defend me in exchange for 20% of my winnings. I realized this is more than normal, but I was at a loss for options. In addition to suing her for making false accusations against me, I will also tell the court that she acknowledges that she still engages in these behaviors. Since I was wrongfully imprisoned for so long, I will also rationally sue the government. In all honesty, I simply want justice, because I know that no amount of money in the world can make up for it. Even though I know that I will end up making a lot of money, the years I spent behind bars for a crime I didn't commit, the time I lost, I can't wait to show her that I taped everything she said when the court notification arrives tomorrow. When the notification came, the house fell into disarray. My sister's haughty manner vanished for the first time. I could see the terror in her eyes, even though she attempted to pretend like it wasn't a huge problem. She tried to get the paper out of my grasp, but I had duplicates in storage already. "I take it you're kidding?" She smiled nervously, but no one could tell. "Are you certain that you will get away with this?" I answered. "Everything you did is going to be exposed. Your arrogance is going to be your undoing." My parents immediately joined the dispute. As was to be expected, Mom was upset, not at myself or her, but at the circumstance. She attempted to downplay things as usual, claiming that I was exaggerating and that the family would be destroyed. In contrast, my father said nothing. He always chose to remain silent to avoid confrontation, even though he sensed something was amiss. That simply made me more irate. He was complacent for years. And now I took the brunt of it all as he stood there silent, screaming that I was insane and that it was all a setup. My sister started to deny everything. I was aware of her fear, though. She performed what she usually did best at that point, manipulation. With tears in her eyes, she turned to face our parents and said, "Are you really going to let him do this to me? He is attempting to destroy our family." As expected, my mom gave in. "Son, you can't do this. She's your sister. Think about what you're doing, please." I didn't move, though. "This has been on my mind for 12 years, I said icily. "Someone has to make the payment now." The days that followed were quite demanding. My sister made every effort. She began by feigning regret. She pleaded, sobbed, and vowed to change. When it failed, she changed strategies. She began to provoke me, attempting to infuriate me. I was hoping that I would do something hasty that she could condemn me for. However, I was ready. I understood that every phrase and threat I wrote down may be helpful. She appeared confident once more on the day of the hearing. She arrived well-dressed and with that cocky smirk I had grown to hate. However, I was at ease. I was aware of what I had. My attorney wasted no time throughout the trial. I produced some damaging recordings. It was clear that she was admitting to her misdeeds. She made an effort to deny it, saying I had altered the tapes, that everything was a part of a plot. However, the judge didn't appear to be persuaded. Then came the most infuriating part. My dad was asked to give his testimony. After some hesitation, he finally acknowledged that he was aware of my sister's history of mischief and theft. I felt a mixture of relief and rage, but it was a severe blow to her. When he knew the truth, why hadn't he spoken out sooner and allowed me to suffer in prison? In contrast, my mother was a complete mess. She attempted to justify my sister by claiming that while she was impetuous and immature, she would never do such a serious act. She murmured something about how difficult it was to pick between her children when I asked her why she didn't believe me. It was pitiful. While they were still defending her, there I was, 12 years later, my life in ruins. Playing the recording was the most pleasant part. As everyone listened to my sister implicate herself, the courtroom became quiet. For the first time, she looked entirely different. She seems truly afraid. She started crying when the judge inquired whether she had anything to say. She broke down in tears, saying she was perplexed, didn't know why she had done it, and never intended me to end up behind bars. However, I was aware that it was really another ploy. The judge did the same. She was ultimately found guilty of perjury and evidence fabrication. She will probably never be able to pay the damages she was ordered to pay. It was a minor win for me, but I knew the fight against the government would be more difficult because the case was still pending. I was relieved to leave the courtroom, but I also felt a weird emptiness. The years I had lost would not be restored by any of this. At least my sister was finally being held accountable for her acts, even if I still didn't have a job, a house, or a definite future. The days that followed were tense and exciting at the same time. The atmosphere in my parents' house, where my sister was still residing, was intolerable. She stayed away from me, but I was correct to suspect that she was planning something. I once heard her and my mother talking one evening. My sister promised to find a method to make things better, because I was still without a prize. Yes, there was. Nothing had changed for her. She was unaware of the fact that I was ready for the following phase. I was aware that there were yet more falsehoods to reveal and more facts to unearth. The trial was only the first step. She had committed many more crimes and acted dishonestly than she had previously acknowledged. and I would see to it that every little detail was revealed. I'm waiting for her next move right now. One thing is for sure, though, my battle is far from done. I won't stop until she pays for everything, even though she believes she can continue to get away with it. There is so much more to uncover, and my will to see justice served is stronger than ever. Finally, after weeks of enduring that stressful atmosphere, something changed. I received word that my complaint against the government had been approved. My attorney was certain that we would win because of the recordings and the government's obvious lack of investigation. This made me even more determined to put an end to this chapter, not just with the government, but also with my sister. I started planning my next course of action while the litigation against the government moved along. Living under the same roof had become intolerable, and I knew my sister would never change. She was unable to avoid provoking me whenever she came into contact with me. She would occasionally smirk malevolently, as though she still had cards to play. At other times, she would whisper to herself that this was not how things would end. It dawned on me then that she still had something to conceal. I began to observe her more closely, how she talked on the phone for hours on end, how she went for extended periods of time and then came back with dubious-looking bags. I found out that she had a small, locked room in the house, which we all thought was unoccupied. However, something felt off. The time had come to find out. While my sister was away, I obtained the room's key by making up an excuse with my parents. What I discovered inside supported my suspicions. There were boxes of things in the room that obviously weren't hers: jewelry, electronics, and clothing. She continued to steal. This time, however, she kept things in my bed rather than concealing them there. I documented every item and its condition by taking pictures of it. When we were by ourselves that evening, I went up to my sister. When I showed her the pictures, she was astounded. "You're not going to change, are you?" I asked in a composed tone. She knew she was in a tight spot, but she made an effort to deny it. She verbally attacked me after realizing there was no way out, accusing me of being the issue all along, that everything that happened to me was my fault. She was unaware that I was recording everything she said at the time and had already forwarded the pictures to my attorney. With the help of my attorney, we turned over all the evidence to the police a few days later. They moved swiftly. She was surprised when the police showed up at our door one morning. My mom went into a panic. As usual, my father did not say anything. However, my sister cried, screamed, and pleaded. However, there was no way out this time. They looked around the room and verified all of my claims. She was taken away in handcuffs, right in front of everyone, and as much as I hated to admit it, it was satisfying to see her finally face the consequences. The house became eerily quiet after that. My parents were inconsolable. Not for me, but for her. Still, I knew there was no other way. I needed justice. Meanwhile, the case against the government was also nearing its end. After months of hearings and statements, the judge finally delivered the verdict. The government was found guilty of negligence for convicting me without conducting a proper investigation. I was awarded a substantial settlement, money that would never bring back the years I lost, but finally gave me a chance to start over with the money. I decided to do something I had always wanted: leave that house. I found a small apartment in a quiet neighborhood and started planning the next chapter of my life, but I couldn't completely move on just yet. I knew my sister was still in custody awaiting trial for her most recent crimes, and that gave me an odd sense of peace. The day of her trial arrived. I attended as a witness. When I walked into the courtroom and saw sitting there, head bowed, I didn't feel pity, but a bitter sense of satisfaction. She was finally where she belonged. The judge was relentless. The evidence was overwhelming, and her lack of remorse sealed her fate. She was sentenced to several years in prison with no possibility of parole for a long time. As she was led away, she didn't look at me, but I knew she felt my gaze on her. My parents tried to maintain contact with me after everything, but I knew I needed to cut ties. They had never believed me when I needed them most, never stood up when everything was falling apart. And now, after everything, there was no room for them in my life. I severed all connections and focused on rebuilding what I had lost. Today, months after everything, I feel like I can finally breathe. My life is far from perfect, but for the first time in years, I feel like I'm in control. My sister is in prison. My parents are no longer part of my routine, and the settlement money has given me the ability to start again. but there's still an emptiness. A part of me realizes that those lost years can never be restored. What I don't know is if this is indeed the end. My sister is like a shadow that always reappears. And even in prison, I feel like it's not the last I'll hear of her. But for now, I'm at peace. And if she ever attempts something again, I'll be ready. Because now I know I'm stronger than she can ever be. Story 3. Following the settlement of their $180,000 debt. I didn't receive an Easter invitation. We feel impoverished because of you. Mom sent Dad a text. Without saying a word, I sent my bank statement. Then all of them were banned. My sister was yelling 20 minutes later. My father called. At that point, I took things a step further. Do you know what's wrong with you? Halfway through her second glass of wine, my sister commented, "Do you believe that wealth creates family?" I blinked as I glanced at her, unable to determine whether this was meant to be a joke. No, it wasn't. Not even looking up from her phone did my mom. She said, "Don't be dramatic, Aaron. Easter is here. Let's avoid making you feel bad." 2 days prior to Easter Sunday, it was April 13. With my phone in hand, I sat by myself at my kitchen counter. This is the third time I've read the family group chat where everyone confirmed the Easter brunch. At precisely 11 a.m., everyone save me brought anything to my parents' place. I was not invited. There had been silence, not a message, no phone call, no, "Will you be visiting this year?" Pretending that I was missed isn't even a lie. Nothing but quiet. And if it weren't for my cousin Madison, the first wouldn't have known. Bless her large lips and kind heart. Who accidentally texted me, "Will you be returning with the spinach pie?" Aunt Lydia expressed her hope that you will. She texted me instead of my sister as she intended, the one who wasn't even invited. I didn't respond. I simply go back and go over the danger. There they were, picture after picture of colorful napkins, recipes for quiche, and my mother talking about how the family was at last whole again. Complete means without me. And I sensed it at that moment. Nor rage, nor the typical sting. Only this crisp, icy clarity, similar to what you get just before a free fall. As you can see, I settled all of their debt 6 months prior, $180,000, Emily's graduate school loans, medical expenses, and mortgage arrears. My dad still referred to it as a misunderstanding because she never even paid off his IRS bill. Everything is gone. While most people would have been devastated by the blow to my money account, I had prepared for it. I had foregone weekends, vacations, and years of saving. I didn't do anything to express gratitude. I didn't anticipate being wiped, though. Then the text arrived. My mother said this when I gently questioned her about why no one had considered include me. "We feel impoverished because of you." That was it. No emoticons. There is no punctuation. Simply because you make us feel inadequate. I didn't respond. I didn't have to. I grabbed a clear snapshot of the transfer records after opening my banking app, all of my payments throughout the past year, including the $600 Stargate card and the $42 home loan. Emily submitted it to the group chat but never paid. My dad called me 5 minutes later and my phone buzzed. I turned it down. My sister then began texting. "Just what did you do? Pick up the phone." "Avoid doing this here. Unblock, please, Mom. Lastly, you're destroying everything." I wasn't finished, though. Not quite yet. Because they had no idea how far I was going to go, and they never saw it coming. 3 days passed in quiet. Dad then shattered it. He just sent one email. Subject line, "Be sensible." No salutation, no expression of regret, no sign of comprehension, just, "We didn't intend to leave you out." In actuality, though, your attitude has been challenging lately. Easter ought to be a time of celebration. Do you have that strain in your eyes when you arrive up? That isn't happy. Don't exaggerate the situation. A cheesecake recipe in PDF format is attached. As though I would return by baking something. Something broke inside of me, and it wasn't the healing sort, even after I erased it. I began to take out receipts, literal ones. Every penny, every transfer, every Venmo for Mom's emergency dental care, Dad's breaks, and Emily's copay. For $180.68, I created a spreadsheet with the title Every Row. The $13,500 loan was Emily's last chance before collections. The 2021 tax lien of Dad, Mom's overdraft of $600 after purchasing a new mattress for Emily. Then it dawned on me. On Easter, they remembered me. Unless anything broke, they never remembered me. I was a living contingency plan, a compassionate location where they may deposit their own ATM. I was also worn out. However, they weren't. On the same day, Emily shared a carousel on Instagram. She captioned the photo, "I'm so thankful for the people who never make me feel like I owe them anything," while wearing a sundress and carrying a mimosa. They were all at brunch in the final picture. As if it were the grandchild, Emily's puppy was held by her dad and his dumb salmon polo mom. Never once did I show them a picture of a house that was just like mine. There was no caption, but it was obvious what it meant. No caption. A picture that was a perfect match for my house. No caption. The connotation, however, was obvious. I saw then that this was more than simply a financial issue. Control was at issue here. I sent Emily a straightforward text. "My house was uploaded by you." She didn't respond after reading it. I received a parcel at my door 2 hours later. No return address or name is included. A photo of my family in a frame. Father, mother, Emily. During Christmas of the previous year, it didn't include me. The picture wasn't taken by me. During the week following the illness, I was in the hospital recuperating in quiet as they shared pictures of their lucky family with eggnog. A letter was affixed on the back of the frame. "This is the appearance of tranquility." I looked at my credit report that evening. 3 tough questions that I didn't approve. 2 of the private lenders were from the same city, and 1 was for a car loan. My parents reside there. I phoned the bank to find out if any recent financial applications had utilized my personal information without my consent. The female caller fell silent. At last, she responded, "Yes. In fact, there is now 1 pending." I went cold. She perused the application. My father, Robert Cartwright, identified me as a co-signer on his application 2 days earlier, used a lease document from years ago that I had supplied him as evidence of residency. It was at that point that I stopped assuming the worst. I gave him a call. He didn't respond. I then gave my mother a call. She did. "How come he would do that?" I inquired. She remained silent for a little too long. "We then assumed you wouldn't mind. We assumed you wouldn't object." She phrased it as if asking for a drink of water would be equivalent to hijacking my identity, which made me laugh not because it was humorous. I advised her to withdraw the application right away. What did she say? "Perhaps we wouldn't have to speculate about your reaction if you weren't so aloof." I realized then that they would never stop. I thus modified the guidelines. The next day, I made a fresh email. "I have not yet sent anything from it. Just be ready." I then made backups of all my financial records, screenshots, quotes, and even audio recordings, such as the one from Emily's sobbing call at 2 a.m. last summer, because I sent her $850 in 5 minutes when her car broke down in the middle of nowhere. The clip is still with me. The only one I can rely on is you. I promised to repay you. She didn't. I dug deeper. My laptop's old hard disk was discovered. Emily returned the one she had borrowed 3 years prior, cleaned. However, before she took it, I mirrored it. I opened it in her notes app and saw screenshots of her email drafts, fake tales of sobbing. In the past, she would guilt ex-boyfriends. "Things to say if Aaron brings up money" is the title of one file. "My name," bullet pointed. "You always mention money as if it improves you. You weren't asked to pay. It's obvious that you need therapy, not family." Then the real hit. A video shot 2 years ago during Christmas. As they all opened presents, I was cleaning up in the kitchen. Emily is filming, whispering, "Look at St. Aaron, always working, never invited." Laughter in the background. My mother's voice. "She likes being the helper. Don't ruin it." My vision blurred. Not from tears, from rage. That night, I created a folder. Proof of everything. I filled it with PDFs, audio, images, even transcriptions. Then I zipped it and saved it to a drive labeled, "In case they try again." I didn't have to wait long. 2 days later, I got a text from Emily. "Hey, can you send $300 for dog daycare? We're going away this weekend." As if nothing had happened. No apology, no acknowledgement. Like the only glitch was that I stopped paying on time. I didn't respond. She sent another. You're seriously going to ghost the people who raised you? Then Mom joined in. Emily stressed. The least you could do is help her. Then finally, Dad let it go already? You've done your part. No one's asking you to save us. That's when I sent it. The bank statement. Clean cropped $180, $543.27. Paid out in total since 2019. No words, just numbers. And that's when my phone started ringing. Emily. Then Dad again. FaceTime this time. Then came the Facebook messages, the DMs from random chance. The screenshot my coworker sent me of a Facebook post from Mom. Some people think money makes them better than others. Easter is about real love, not transactions. Below it, a photo of the brunch caption. We chose peace this year. I chose silence, but peace. They hadn't even seen what was coming because I wasn't just cutting them off. I was going to dismantle the story they built around me. And when all fell apart, when the mask dropped, they would finally see I was never the problem. I was just the one who stopped pretending everything was fine. They didn't know I was coming. And that was the point. When my sister texted my previous landlord 2 days before Easter to inquire if that girl with the ponytail still lives in Aaron's building, I knew they believed I'd disappear again. Stay silent. Stay out of the path, just as I always had. But this time, I wasn't bringing dessert. I was bringing proof, and I wasn't coming alone. The brunch was set at 11 a.m. I arrived there at 10:57, parked up to the curb outside their suburban house, the one I had been paying the mortgage on for 3.5 years, and simply sat for a second. My heart wasn't racing. My hands weren't shaking. I was calm since today wasn't about fury. It was about reckoning. When I walked up the driveway, I could hear them inside. Laughter, plates, shivering glasses. A gathering. A party. Once again without me. When the door opened and my mother's face fell like a terrible hand of cards, I rang the bell. She remained silent. She simply moved out of the way. The interior of the house resembled something from Pinterest. White flowers, Easter eggs, and dresses that match. Half drunk on champagne and wearing a flowery dress, Emily froze with her fork in midair. Well, said Dad, standing at the head of the table, like a bad guy in a low-budget drama, that is. You are not invited. He stated it simply. I grinned. I am aware. After then, I took an envelope out of my backpack. I put it on the table and added, since we're being honest, before the quiche gets cold inside, you might want to read this. A thorough audit. I provided them PDFs for each dollar I ever sent. Screenshots of Emily requesting money for her nails from the dog daycare. Bank records demonstrating how Mom used food money to fuel her HSN addiction, and above all, the bank letter. The one verifying that the mortgage was never refinanced, contrary to what Dad said. 3 years ago, when he defaulted and pleaded with me to cover it for the time being, it was secretly moved to my name. As I watched them all read, I saw my father's face turn as white as paper, Emily's fingers quiver, and my mother mouth the words as if they were poison. I said, that's not all. I took my phone out and hit play on a voice memo. The room echoed with Emily's voice. We'll simply pretend she volunteered if she finds out. Eventually, Aaron always gives in. Next, Dad's voice. She is too tender to go. As before, just murdered her. And lastly, my mom. Remind her of who covered her college expenses if she begins to misbehave. The fact that it is a falsehood is irrelevant. She refuses to check. Quiet, dense, unforgiving. Actual. I turned to face my sister. You want to let them know about the phony messages you created using your Notes app, in which you altered my text to give the impression that I was threatening you. Emily remained silent. I took a flash drive out of my pocket and threw it on the table. It has everything, I said. Files from Photoshop, edits.metadata. The process. Copies are with my lawyer. If she checks her inbox, so does yours. Suddenly, my dad sprang up and clenched his fist. Do you believe this to be proof? Do you believe that people are interested? You're simply resentful. No, I responded coolly. I just finished. Then Emily's ex-boyfriend Morgan entered via the front door. It was the violent one she told everyone. Poisonous, infatuated. I defended the one she stated because I detested seeing her pleased. He had a folder in his hand, dense, tabbed, numbered. He nodded to the room and added, Niece house. Too bad it's all based on falsehoods. Setting the folder aside, he opened it. Screenshots of Emily's previous voice conversations, in which she practiced theatrical retellings of prior disagreements, and pictures from evenings she subsequently misrepresented to others, were among the contradictions found therein. When my dad lunges forward, I move to the side. I said, "You touch him." This also applies to all media outlets from here to Washington, D.C. Do you believe that he was ruined? Hold off until the appropriate people are notified, and they won't overlook it, I promise. My mom took a firm seat. Desperate, Emily turned to Morgan. "It's beyond your comprehension." "Yes, I do," he interrupted her. "I'm not going to overlook this because of this." He gave me a look. "Are you prepared?" More than before. Emily's scream reached my ears as I was leaving the house. Not a sentence, not a word. A guttural sound of panic, that's all. Like someone whose authority had been taken away in the middle of a sentence. My dad yelled as he attempted to follow. "Everyone's situation is getting worse because of you." "No," I said, turning around. "I'm just turning on the lights." Then I permanently left. They awaited the detonation. They anticipated fireworks. They assumed I would use the internet. Let everything out. Use a viral thread to destroy them. Because you do that now, don't you? However, I didn't. I didn't publish anything. I didn't post a tweet. I didn't record a sob tale with a weak voice and hashtags like family, betrayal, and hashtag. I simply became silent, and they were devastated by that. My dad texted me on the Monday after Easter. "You won't get away with this." Then 2 hours later, "We need to discuss." Then, through tears, I heard my mother's voicemail. "Don't do anything dramatic, please. Emily feels overburdened." They are stating that. However, I had already done the one thing they were really afraid of, so I hadn't even begun. The unauthorized paperwork filed under my name in 2018 was discreetly and legally reversed with the assistance of a very skilled lawyer. I also closed all doors, froze the mortgage, reported the unauthorized application that used my name, and stopped all auto payments. I no longer own the house. Emily drives a repossessed automobile in order to preserve it. By the week's conclusion, the Veterans Program's small business grant application, it has been marked for review, the icing on the cake. An official document disowning them was enclosed in a single envelope of certified mail that came at their door on Friday morning. No showmanship, no threats, a simple legal breach. One handwritten letter too. Even though you have all you needed, you decided to take extra that weekend. It took me 3 hours to drive north. Just a coastline, no goal, simply be silent. I rented a lodge without a TV or Wi-Fi. It was just myself, a notepad, and a prepaid phone number that only I knew. I learned early on from my former employer that yelling louder isn't the key to survive. Knowing when to disappear is key. I stayed there for 3 days without telling anybody or checking my messages. Social media simply existed. Not being helpful, not being accountable, not acting guilty. Heaven was there. The inbox was filled when I returned. A message from a cousin who lives far away. "You're in rehab," they say. One of the girls I dated once DM'd me. "Tonight your sister will go live in order to cleanse her name. Just so you know, my father left me a voicemail." Out of breath, enraged. Do you consider yourself clean? You don't find this offensive until you've made this family feel ashamed? Individuals converse. We needed to share something with them. The worst thing I did caused them to spiral. I didn't answer. No counter-arguments, no explanations, no defense. I saw them swing at shadows and throw blows in the dark. Emily tweeted something mysterious. "It's funny how those who are guilty of it vanish," one of her buddies responded. "However, did your brother not cover your tuition?" Then another response. "Hold on, didn't he also pay your rent?" Then a pause, followed by deletion. After that, her whole profile was made private. A letter reached my new address 2 weeks later. I recognized the handwriting within, but there was no return name. This is not where we intended things to go. All of this would not have occurred if you had simply behaved normally. Traditional, no possession. The cursive is wobbly, and the blame is at the bottom. Mom, love. I burnt it slowly, page per page. Then I took the one unexpected action. Quietly, I created a new life. A little fixer-upper, huh? An hour away from the city. Money. No cosigners. Not a witness. Painted sage green on the walls. Shelves were hung. Took a dog from a shelter and adopted it. A mutt with 3 legs and an ear scar. And the kindest person I had ever encountered. I gave her the name Balance. Returned to work. This time, a new business. More flexibility. Fewer clients. I told them I didn't want to be in charge. Only projects. Just tranquility. No forwarding address from family. No strings. No emergency contacts. What's the best part? No one I knew had any explanation. To feel less guilty, they can say whatever they want and create whatever version of me they need. Inform their small circles that I'm angry or lost. Permit them. Allow them to scream into a hole they created for themselves. Because this is the reality. To obtain justice, you don't have to go viral. To be free, you don't need a million likes. Sometimes leaving without saying anything and never returning is the most effective thing you can do. I used to believe that I was the issue. Not thankful enough, not loud enough, not forgiving enough. I always questioned what I had done wrong when they lied to me. Each time they excluded me, I accused myself of being difficult to love. I told myself I gave too much each time they exploited me. But now I see it. It wasn't difficult to adore me. I was simply simple to utilize. 5 months have passed. No voicemails, no messages, and no phony excuses cloaked in Christian guilt. I barred all known contacts, including family friends who used to inquire about my well-being, changed my phone number, and filed a mail forwarding stop. And the quiet. It tastes good. I began my morning with a coffee interview. Don't call in an emergency, Dad. 5 minutes before rent. Don't send desperate "can you help" texts. Simply be silent. I'm typing on my patio as my dog snores beneath the table. There are still living plants. When I lived in anarchy, I was never able to handle this. When I want to, I see people. I only give when I feel like it. And unless I want them to, nobody knows where I reside. I received a letter last week, written by hand. No address for return. There was a picture of the 3 of them inside. Emily, Mom, and Dad are out in front of the old house. It was disintegrating. Scrawled pen, lifeless shutters, paint peeling grass, and half-hung, shattered promises on the rear. Family always makes a return. On the terrace, I burnt it in a pottery bowl. Observe how it turns into ash. After that, I poured a glass of wine for myself and made the last adjustment I had been putting off until now. I took out a matte black Loctite box and opened it to reveal an etched single metal sign. Not on Instagram. Not for influence. Only for me. I grabbed a screwdriver, went outside, and inserted it into my house's wooden gate. Emergency situations are not permitted below. With smaller letters. This is no longer your escape strategy. Allow them to share their tales. In their own echo chamber, let them yell. Allow them to dwell in the quiet they created, the one I ultimately decided to abandon. I'm not the person who abandoned the family. I was supposed to grin as I drowned because they made it into a lending office. I'm free now. And they're right where they should be. Without me, together.